It's time for DocTalk Radio, brought to you by Gilbert Hospital and Florence and Anthem Hospitals. I'm Dr. Ann Borick, board certified in internal medicine, and I'm here to keep you up to date on the latest information pertaining to your health and well-being. Welcome to DocTalk Radio, sponsored by Gilbert Hospital and Florence Hospital at Anthem. Boy, we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on in the research arena today as it pertains to health and well-being and nutrition and all of that stuff. Our listeners out there, I want to open up and focus a little bit about the Mediterranean diet. There was a lot of talk about that this past week because there's studies now that prove that the Mediterranean diet actually helps to decrease heart disease in people who follow it. And I know, Joe, we've talked a lot, these past several months, being on the show here with
right.
DocTalk, and the importance of healthy choices and so forth. And I know even in your own, we were talking in your own life.
Every day I'm feeling better and better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm down 59 pounds as of 2 days ago.
Wow.
So I'm only weighing myself about once every 4 or 5 days,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling great. I'm up to almost 2 miles on the treadmill now.
That's great.
5 days a week. I do every other day. I do my my circuit workout, and I have a trainer I'm starting with Thursday.
So I'm sure that blood sugar is better. I mean, everything is better.
Yes.
Sleep better. Yeah,
yes.
Everything.
Absolutely.
That's good.
And I've got another 59 to go.
Wow. But it's worth it. It's one step at a time.
Yep.
And if this show never happens again,
right.
At least looking back, it impacted at least your life in a huge way.
And you just got to remember, it's day to day.
It's day to day,
like everything else. And I've come to realize, I see people smoking, and I go, wow, that must be difficult to stop. And I realize, there's nothing harder. And it's hard for me to believe that because it's so hard to change your eating style and working out and to change your lifestyle to that. So I can feel the pain.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to talk about smoking. You just mentioned that in reference to a reference, but I want to just put out the phone number. Call in. This is a time, again, that we're going to be open mic. Call in, ask any questions. If you have a topic that you want me to talk about, 480-745-1033. So the Mediterranean diet, what is it? What are some of the foods? I have a little booklet here that I put together that really outlines some of the research. And I got to tell you, I want to make sure that you hear the word research, because this is medical evidence in looking at different foods. There's a summary of research studies on the Mediterranean diet, and it impacts the length of life expectancy. Clearly, people who eat the types of foods that we'll be talking about here in a minute live longer. It improves brain function, protects against certain chronic diseases. There's even some studies showing that it can actually help fight cancer, and so we'll go over some of those studies. Obviously, weight loss is a huge piece of it. Depression. You don't think about diet and how diet affects how our brain works.
You know what, Dr. Borick?
Mm-hmm.
I was on 2 different, one anti-anxiety and one for depression pills, and I get off them.
That's great.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. In certain foods.
And I feel a million times better.
Do you?
I was starting to have pains in my side, and I was starting to get these ailments, and I got to the point where it was like, it's like you hit rock bottom. I'm like, I can't get out of bed. I'm tired. I feel like crap all the time. I'm tired all the time, no matter what. I feel sluggish. My bowel movements aren't regular.
Right.
They're, runny and always diarrhea, and I just felt terrible. You know what? I got to tell you, I was drinking up to a case a day of diet soda.
Wow.
Diet, a case a day. I would sit and eat a whole frozen pizza and a bag of chips, and always watching movies and not doing anything. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing. I mean, I was on the road for total disaster quickly.
Absolutely. And it's a vicious cycle, because you feel so bad, and then you think, well, if I have a diet soda or I have something sweet, it's going to make me feel better, and it makes you worse, and it's a vicious cycle.
I got to the point where it was just like, you know what? I think I'm at the end of the road. I'm never going to I swear to God, I got to the point where I'm like, I'm never going to go skiing again. I'm never going to go scuba diving again. I'm never going to be able to walk on the beach without a shirt on again. I'm never going to do any of that stuff. So you know what? Let me just put me in a pizza.
Right.
Put me in some fries. You know what I mean?
I do.
Oh, and yes, stop by Chick-fil-A on the way home, and I'll take a large fry. Get me the fried chicken sandwich. It was that bad. It's a vicious thing that never stops. It's like, oh yeah, give me a chocolate pie. Anything. It doesn't diabetes. It doesn't matter.
Right.
At that point.
You know, this is huge for you to share that, because I'm sure that there are listeners out there that really, I mean, are saying the same thing that you're saying.
I was done. I was done. I was to the point where I'm like, there's no way I'm living another 15, 20 years. No way. I'm never doing anything I like again. So I'll watch some movies and get fat. Right. Because there's no way I'm losing this much weight. I'm to the point of no return. And I don't know what it was. One day I said, you know, this sucks. I got to change this. And I decided I'm going to Costa Rica. And we're going to go to Costa Rica for a couple of weeks in April. And I said, you know, I go to Costa Rica looking like a fat slob. I'm not going to have a good time there. I'm going to sit and watch TV wherever I'm at. Right. And I said, I can't do this. I have a few months. Right. And I had already started. And I'm like, got to do it. And then I just tightened up and said, no more smoothies twice a day. A vegetable smoothie. I'm still learning how to just take those down. You know, the kale and the broccoli and the cucumber and, you know, all the veggies. I'm eating so many veggies now, I'm turning like green and orange.
That's fantastic.
But every morning a smoothie. No eggs, no potatoes, like every day. Greasy, every day. And 6 days a week. And
I know on our show we had, you know, a guest on the show from the olive mill.
Yes.
And from that time,
that's when
you've said that, you know, you use olive oil, and that's part of the whole Mediterranean diet.
That's the day I stopped eating butter and margarine or just regular butter, and I started putting olive oil on everything. And that's when I started going, wow, I'm losing. I didn't even know my pants were fitting looser, and then I said, you know, maybe I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. So I quit eating sugar, and I cut my diet back from a case, which is 24 cans in a day.
Wow.
I was up to that, and I know that for sure because I was keeping kind of track, and I was embarrassed. I cut that down to about 12, which is half. I started losing weight. I'm like, losing it anyway. Wow, just eating olive oil? I was eating that much butter, and then I realized, my wife says, you were getting 3 of those 1 pound butter tubs a week.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's huge.
Plus everything else.
And then on top of that, you feel better, so you know, you don't feel as depressed. You're more motivated.
Yes.
The hormones in your brain tend to, you know, normalize. You get higher serotonin levels. Cortisol level goes down, and so with that, less fat deposition, and you start losing weight.
And I'm still 50 pounds down. I'm 59 pounds down, and I've had about, in the last month, I've had about 7 or 8 days that I couldn't take pills. Wow. Because when I do my blood sugar, it's been 105 or 95, and it's time to take them. I'm like, maybe you just don't take them.
Right. And if you're listening out there, you know, this is a great message. If you have diabetes, you know, it's not about eliminating necessarily, you know, diet. We think about, you know, it's really about bringing in foods that are healthy for the body.
I've been afraid to say the word diet. I've been afraid to say that because I've been on thousands of them. Thousands. Some last 30 seconds.
Right.
Exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, every diet there is. I've heard of it and I've tried it and they don't work. Right. You gain back 20 more pounds. This is a lifestyle change completely because I want to scuba dive again. I want to ski again. I want to be active again before I freaking die.
I would love to hear anybody out there that is listening call in and maybe share your story with us.
Please.
You know, I'd love to hear, you know, as it pertains to what Joe was talking about in terms of healthy choices, you know, with food.
Right.
So, you know, the Mediterranean diet, some of the other studies, research studies that we're seeing, protective against diabetes, protective against even Parkinson's. You know, there's a lot of talk about diet omega-3 fats that are protective for the brain. Studies show that. And when you look at, you know, the Mediterranean diet, you know, in terms of not only the olive oil, the fresh fish, salmon, but nuts, you know, almonds and different types of nuts are very, very protective for the brain. There's actually some studies showing that diet, including the diet associated with the Mediterranean foods, actually help to improve and actually can even arrest the progression of rheumatoid arthritis. So, you know, that's huge. Wow. And I know we have some callers here, so again, don't hesitate. This is really a day that I want to set aside to hear some of your testimony as it pertains to what we're talking about in terms of healthy eating, exercise, diet, as it pertains to depression, anxiety, heart disease, diabetes. Call 480-745-1033.
I got the phone off just for a second because we got a whole bunch of lines.
We have a bunch of lines going.
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, we got a bunch of lines
Good,
ringing.
good.
Cheryl from Mesa said, we did the shots, and we lost, me and her husband lost 220 pounds between them. And in the last 6 months, they did the HGH. They've gained 300 back between them.
That's,
300 pounds in 6 months.
The human growth hormone, the HCG. I've seen that.
God.
There was a time in the hospital. People know that I'm a hospitalist, work at the hospital. There was a group of people that decided, the nurses and some of the staff, to go on this HCG diet, despite my saying, that's probably not a good idea. And
I've seen people on it.
Every single one of them have gained weight back.
My buddy, the Pinal County Clerk of the Court, Chad Roche, Superior Court Clerk, he lost, I think, him and his wife lost 80, 90, 100 pounds. And Chad, it's nothing bad. Yeah, hey, man, I still love you. But he's put on...
that plus.
Maybe double.
Yeah, and that's a problem. So don't, it's like Russian roulette with your metabolism.
Right.
Don't risk that. We've had patients come into the hospital that I've admitted in renal failure, kidney failure because of the HCG diet. It really is not a good thing. Again, keep the phones, I would love to hear your story and some of the testimonies about it. But I want to talk about some of the specific Mediterranean foods. I know we have a call here that maybe we can take a live and we can listen to it, but I want to get to tabbouleh. Tabbouleh is something that is part of the Mediterranean diet. And what tabbouleh is made up of is parsley, there's cracked wheat, mint, tomatoes, onion, fresh lemon, sometimes garlic is put in it, and it's very, very beneficial for the body.
Let's bring on, and I want to see if you mind.
Okay, no,
Marianne from Albany says, I've got a great story. I'd love to tell it on the air.
Let's listen. Perfect.
Yeah?
This is good.
Let's go ahead and get her set up here real quick on the air with this. And we'll hear a story from Marianne out of Albany. One more second here, Marianne. I'm not set up to go on the air all the time here since I take a lot of messages, but now we are. Perfect. All right.
Okay, Marianne, are you there?
Hi, yes, this is Marianne. Is this Dr. Boris?
Yes, it is. Thank you for calling.
Yes.
I'd love to hear your story.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, why don't you share with us your story?
I'm actually a nurse. I'm originally from Chandler.
I know who you are. Is this Marianne 10K?
In September, unfortunately in September, reality kind of hit me. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And for years as a nurse, I was told, do this, do that. And it's sad that it took something like that for me to actually come to the reality of what I had to do. I have been on a very strict, conscientious observance of foods and things, and I've lost 62 pounds.
Wow.
When I was first diagnosed, my A1C was almost 13. I just had it rechecked this week, and I was at 5.2.
That's awesome. Marianne, I am so proud of you. For those of you listening, Marianne is from Chandler. We've worked years together. So first of all, it's great to hear your voice. This is an unsolicited call. I didn't know that you were going to call in, but that's fantastic. How did you? What did you do? What process?
I started going to a dietitian. And just really started researching the things of different foods, trying to find out what were the best carbohydrates to take in, what were the best vegetables, and, just different things, and really looking and being conscientious of the amounts, my proportions. I mean, I was shocked to realize just how little it took to really satisfy me compared to how I used to. I heard the gentleman talking about diet sodas and stuff, and I lived off of that, and I've totally eliminated that from my diet.
Wow.
That's
just all the things that I knew that never took the time. When you get a scare, I was so sick. I was in the intensive care unit for 5 days.
Wow.
And I had blood sugars in the 600s.
Wow.
And I don't know, a light just finally went off, and it's like everything I ever learned finally came to reality. And I just put it into a working. I do a little exercise, not as much as I should or could, but I do walk 3 days a week now.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure your skin is better, you feel better, you sleep better, everything, your whole life probably just, you feel better.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's been a total change. I mean, just completely. And I mean, I'm not where I need to be yet, but I'm sure a lot closer to it than I was 6 months ago.
It's day to day, right, isn't it? Day to day.
Exactly. I was so thrilled when I saw what the topic was today and that it was open, and I thought, this is my opportunity to call and let everyone know I am doing it.
That is awesome. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear from you. I mean, a hemoglobin A1C from 13 down to 5.7, that in and of itself is a marker that increases life expectancy.
Well, that's what. That's what the endocrinologist. I mean, he was just awed by it. He actually called me himself in the office this week.
That's great.
And he says, I want to know, can I use you for an example? He says, we don't usually see this happen this quick. He says, you really took this serious. And
wow.
I think I did. I think I realized that my life was flashing before me, and I wasn't quite ready to go that way yet.
That's great.
How about energy? Has your energy been greatly affected by this?
It's unbelievable. I mean, I find myself doing things out here that I tried to do before, but I just didn't have it in me. But now I do, and it's remarkable.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Can I ask a really quick question? Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're eating and how your daily regimen is?
I usually, in the mornings, I find myself, and I'm not a variety person. I have to just stick with the same thing.
Me too.
I usually have a Greek yogurt and a half a banana every morning.
Wow.
And at lunchtime, I usually will have some sort of a salad, and I only use no dressings that have no sugars in them. I don't use anything with sugar, or I make my own with just olive oil and a vinegar. And like I said, I'm pretty routine, but I try to have a fish at lunchtime. I usually stick with pork, fish, lean turkey, eat a lot of salmon, which I didn't before. And those are pretty my routine things that I'll have at lunch and at supper. I find that I always measure. I never eat, my meat products are never bigger than the palm of my hand.
Excellent.
I had to use visual techniques to do things. And my snacks that I use now are nuts. Almonds is my big snack that I'll have. And just incorporating, I eat a lot of oranges.
That is, Marianne, thank you so much for calling. We have to get together. Next time you come out to Phoenix, please give me a holler.
I'm hoping. I look forward to seeing you. And thank you so much. And I love the talk show, and I'll continue to listen to it.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks
for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I know that, let's have anybody else call in, share. I want to just recap.
That was fantastic.
That was fantastic. Tips by Marianne. This is basically the message. Use, if you're going to snack, nuts. It's a great snack. That's what we were just talking about for the omega-3 fats.
I feel like part of her family. 59 and she's at 62.
I got to tell you, we had some fantastic days. She was a charge nurse over at Chandler, and just a fantastic nurse, great person. So for me, this was really a treat to, on a personal note.
And she's in Albany, New York. Listening to DocTalk.
Yep. How awesome is that?
That is great.
Anybody else, Joe?
I better check the chat. I don't have the chat up here.
Okay, good. So, before we took the call, I want to just talk a little bit about some of the Mediterranean foods. Tabbouleh is one of them. It's a great healthy food. Parsley, hummus. There's grape leaves. The grape leaf in a lot of the different Greek and Mediterranean and Middle Eastern type foods, the leaf itself is very, very healthy. It contains resveratrol. We know that resveratrol is found in the skin of grapes. Well, in the grape leaf, which is a Greek dish or Middle Eastern dish, very, very healthy. It contains vitamin C. It's a good source of folic acid, and it's a great source of resveratrol, which is actually something that helps to slow down the whole aging process in the body. So really good. Call, our number is 480-745-1033. this is a day that I really want to open the mics up and hear your story.
That's great.
Give us a call.
Absolutely.
Anybody else out there, Joe? You have, if we do, just let me know. I
will let you know.
Okay. In terms of the Mediterranean diet, I have some notes here that I want to share. Alzheimer's dementia. Probably the biggest thing, aside from the whole heart disease, which is what the study really was focused on recently with the Mediterranean diet, proven to help decrease heart disease, is how the Mediterranean diet, the nuts, the fruits, the vegetables, the yogurts, the Greek yogurt and those kinds of foods, pretty much everything that Marianne was just talking about, how that really affects the brain. There was a study looking at the Mediterranean diet and depression and the safeguard from Alzheimer's dementia. Huge. And what happens is the mechanism, basically it was in the Journal of American Medical Association, shows that the omega-3 fats really, really do impact how the brain functions in cognition and how it actually helps with memory. So it's exciting stuff. I mean, there's a lot of exciting information when it comes to the Mediterranean diet. Let's talk about green beans for a minute, because I think it's one of my favorite dishes. In the whole Mediterranean diet, a lot of dishes are made with green beans and tomato sauce and onions and so forth. And a lot of times you eat it with rice. And for those of you listening, I'm probably making you hungry. And just talking about this is making me hungry as well. But green beans provide support for the cardiovascular system, as well as for our bones. So the musculoskeletal system in the body is really impacted. Why? Because green beans really are a great source of not only vitamin C, but manganese, which is a mineral in the body that really helps to support the musculoskeletal system in the bones. And I think that's very, very important. 1 cup of green beans contains only like 45 calories, and therefore it's something great to add to your salad, to your diet. Very, very effective. In fact, it has been found to play a role in helping to prevent osteoporosis. So I think that's something that's real interesting. The Greek yogurt is something that we hear a lot about. And I don't know, for listeners out there, the Greek yogurt is a great source of protein. I know for myself, I've been working out a lot. It's a good, quick source of protein, for the body.
I have that in my smoothies every morning.
Do you?
A thing of Greek yogurt, walnuts, and usually blueberries, strawberries. It's just miscellaneous stuff, and never dairy, almond milk. And for those of you out there, and I have to ask you, is this true?
Yes.
They say not to use soy milk because of the natural estrogen.
Yes.
Is that really something to be concerned about?
It is. There was a study out just recently. I'm glad you brought that up. It does have plant-based estrogen. So soy, for those of you listening that may have a history of breast cancer, a risk of breast cancer, in particular, it is probably not the best choice. For me personally, I don't take any soy products because of that. It has that plant-based estrogen, and so we tend to want to avoid that. Almond milk is a great substitute. People who have dairy intolerant, for example, lactose intolerance, almond milk is a great substitute. Lactose intolerance happens when the body over time begins to lack the enzyme that breaks down dairy. It's called lactose. And so sometimes you can supplement the enzyme, use something called lactaid. There's milk products that have lactate in it. So if you do have lactose intolerance, you can actually supplement it so that you can digest the milk product better. What happens in lactose intolerance? Bloatiness, diarrhea, nausea, a lot of those symptoms which are not good. So almond milk is a great substitute for that.
And it tastes wonderful.
It really does.
It's beautiful.
And it's only 45 calories actually per 8-ounce serving.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
So it's a great supplement.
Very sweet, too.
It's a great supplement for the diet. It's a natural, with the almond you get the omega-3s, which we were just talking about for the brain. So it's a good supplement.
I think I just have to make sure that the fruits I eat aren't naturally too sweet. Could that affect blood sugar?
It could, absolutely. It could. In moderation. You always, you have to be careful. You want to stay in moderation. For those people that, for example, have diverticulitis, you've got to be careful with the nuts, with the seeds, sometimes in the blueberries or in the strawberries. But, having said that, there's different ways that you can supplement.
Bill from Queen Creek called in and he said, I just wanted to say I lost 90 pounds on bagels, cut in half with tomatoes, lacy Swiss, open-faced and toasted. And he's kept it off for the last 6 years.
Wow.
Took him a year.
That's the key.
Eating the same thing every meal or all the time.
That's
is that okay?
Well, you want to add variety.
You would think.
You want to make sure that you get your proteins. You want to make sure that you have a good variety and a mix in your diet. Now, as Marianne said, she tends to stay with the same,
right.
regimen.
And I think people do.
I think a lot.
I know I do. I've
eaten
fish every day for 8 weeks.
But you've got to make sure that within the realm of that you have some variety. To make sure that you're not just taking all starches.
Because when you go back and start eating regular, you'll put it all back on, huh?
Yeah. The other thing, if you're somebody that tends to eat the same thing, let's say, bagels, for 3 meals a day for a year, sometimes what happens in the intestine is you can develop some kind of dysfunction, if you will, in the small intestine in terms of absorption. And over time, you can actually become deficient in folic acid. You can become deficient in vitamin B12. Those kinds of things. So a variety is actually good to help keep the intestine and the colon working the way that it should. And I think that's a very important point.
Nikki from Seattle, Washington says she says she lost weight with 33 pounds doing low impact water aerobics and cutting carbs.
Fantastic. It could be as simple as that.
Simple as that.
It's true. Water aerobics, any exercise in the water is a great exercise.
72-year-old woman.
That's a fantastic exercise. We've had patients who've had low back problems, spinal stenosis, disc disease, and running, walking sometimes can be traumatic to the low back, to the knees. When you get in water, what happens is the energy that you expend, you burn calories, obviously, with movement in the water, but what happens is that the gravitational forces, on the joints in the body are removed. And so you tend to be able to move easier. It's not as strained to the joints. And, water therapy, water aerobics, exercise in the water is a great modality. In fact, we have a physical therapy place here where they have a treadmill underwater. So for people who have low back problems, you actually get in this pool. It's like a big
in the waterproof treadmill.
Absolutely, and so you're actually
awesome.
running and you're monitored, and it's a great modality. Your muscles get exercised, your heart obviously gets exercised. You're oxygenating, really good.
So I said to the trainer yesterday, I said, I'd really like to focus on the backs of my arms. And the man boob thing, because pecs is important, and I want them to be nice and tight. And he says, it's really good you're doing the treadmill like you are and all that. He says, but the only way you're really ever going to do that is to start building muscle.
Right.
And he said, and then you may weigh a little more, so you're not going to lose as quick. He says, but muscle burns. What did he say? Every pound of muscle burns. It burns fat so much faster than if it was just fat.
Right. I think the message is, don't get caught up in looking at the number on the scale.
That's what he was saying.
It's so important. In fact, I don't remember the last time I got on a scale. Because that's not really important. What's important is your body physique, the contact, the toneness. Your cardiovascular health, how far you can walk without getting winded and those kinds of things.
So I said to the trainer, and this guy was in great fabulous shape, 35 years old.
Wow.
I said, yeah, man, you're in great shape. I'm sure you've been like that your whole life. He goes, last year, I weighed 340 pounds.
Wow.
I go, what? He goes, last year, I weighed 340 pounds. He said, this is a year of working out with a trainer. I had to start somewhere, too.
Right.
I was blown away.
It's true, and that's amazing. And so I guess it's possible.
And that's what keeps me going.
Absolutely.
To know that in a year from now, without even really exerting a lot of effort, just with a different change of life,
right,
I could be in perfect shape.
Exactly, and that's huge. Do you have a call there, Joe?
Yeah, Myrna from Tucson with a great question.
Okay.
Very short. Can you take too many supplements?
Yes.
And she says, I've always wondered, and I'm told by all these people, and I spent hours in high health. And
yes. Let me address that.
Absolutely.
Literally just today, there's a study that came out showing that supplements, nutritional supplements that are out there on the market, and I got to tell you, probably over $28 million a year is spent on supplements. More money today is spent on supplements than on prescription medications. It's amazing. The answer is yes. And what the study showed was that it is not necessarily monitored. It's not FDA, monitored. So, for example, vitamin D, that's a simple supplement. You can overdose on it. So you have to be very careful. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. Vitamin A.
But if you overdose,
D,
what happens?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Good.
Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K are the fat-soluble vitamins that you potentially can overdose on. So you've got to be very, very careful of those 4 vitamins. Everything else, in terms of vitamin C and B, and if you take too much, you'll just excrete it. What we're finding, and what this study showed, was that because it's not FDA regulated, when they did this study and looking at samples from different drug lots, for example, from the same bottle, they took 6 different pills, and they wanted to measure the amount of vitamin D in each pill. There was a discrepancy. It was anywhere from 9% to over 140%.
Really? So it's not consistent?
It's not consistent.
That's scary.
And what we're finding is not necessarily the problem of being overdosed on it, but really being underdosed. So let's say you have, a diagnosis of, real, true vitamin D deficiency that is affecting the bones. And, your doctor, endocrinologist, puts you on vitamin D supplements. Well, if it's not regulated, you've got to be very careful because you may not be getting the amount that is really due. So we've got to be cautious. The message is, yes, we've got to be very cautious with supplements. In the hospital, as a hospitalist, I see more people who have too much in their system. We have people that come in what's called rhabdomyolysis, or a breakdown of muscle that can sometimes affect the kidney, from different supplements, different creatine, supplementations and protein kind of things that honestly can be toxic if you're not careful. And on top of that, you match it with these energy drinks, and you cause this, this whole pharmacokinetic in the body that can be dangerous. So yes, you've got to be very, very, very careful. More is not always better. And especially the things that we want to keep in mind, the toxicity effects would be, confusion, lethargy, GI complaints. Probably the most common, if you're overdosing on certain supplements, would be nausea, vomiting. It can cause diarrhea. The problem is sometimes you don't see the effects of it until it's too late. For example, if the kidney becomes affected, you really don't see it. Maybe the urine output is a little bit less, or maybe there's a different color. So you've got to watch very closely, discoloration of the urine, those kinds of things. So one of the things that I would always recommend looking at is if the urine changes color, where it becomes like a tea color, or if it changes color, that in and of itself can be a red flag. And you want to make sure that you bring it to the attention of your physician, because you potentially can cause kidney damage, and that's the number one thing that we want to watch when it comes to overdosing on supplements. You
can cause kidney damage with supplements?
Absolutely, you can. So you've got to be careful. And then on top of that, you take ibuprofen or Advil or Aleve, and it's just a mess. So they're not as safe as really as you think they are.
Here's an interesting one. Jimmy in Scottsdale says since 1993, his chiropractor put him on it. 10,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C.
Of vitamin C?
Vitamin C. 10,000 milligrams.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. Let me just to kind of give our listeners...
He says it seems to work, but he has a lot of heartburn. He's been doing it for 10 years.
That's ascorbic acid. It's going to cause... It's an acidy, scenario. Let me just kind of put that in perspective. The recommended dose, if you're interested in supplementing in vitamin C, the cold and flu season, is anywhere from 1,000 milligrams to maybe 5,000 max. Each of the little pills usually come in 500 milligram tablets. The chewable vitamin C's usually come in
love those.
500 milligrams. You take a couple. You'll eat 3 or 4 a day. In this season, that's safe. There's some studies that have been out in the past looking at high doses of vitamin C for people being treated for cancer, for example. In 10,000 units might be in a protocol for that. But I think on a daily basis, every day, I'm not sure what the side effect is. Usually, as I said, anything other than vitamin A, D, E, or K will excrete out. So chances are, probably he's not getting any bad damage from it. Probably he's urinating it out. Probably wasting a whole lot of money actually, because the body can only absorb so much. So it just depends. But I would certainly not recommend that high of a dose.
Why would a chiropractor do that? Put you on that? Because maybe some of them are
don't
nutritionists.
know. Yeah,
or,
probably.
Gotcha. That took me a second.
But I think that would be very cautious. Last week on our show, I don't know people who were watching, we talked a little bit about a protocol, molasses and and baking soda, and really bringing in more of not an acidic environment in the body, but more of a alkaline. Because we know that certain cells, abnormal cells, for example, cancer cells, can't really survive in an alkaline environment. Vitamin C that high, is there a potential of that causing more of an acidic environment in the body? And can you be doing more damage than good? I don't know. But that would be something that I would want to question. And that's just me talking. I don't have any real literature behind that, but I would be very cautious of that high of a dose.
Can you tell people like a personal kind of what you take?
Yeah, actually, I'm not a big pill pusher, so I don't take a whole lot of medication. I have a multivitamin that is that really contains calcium. Is important. You don't want to overdose on calcium, but certainly calcium is important for bones. So I want to make sure that I get enough calcium a day, no more than 1,000 milligrams a day, with vitamin D. So that's important, and just a good multivitamin. But really, honestly, if you have a good balanced diet, you don't really need to go crazy with all of these supplements.
And when you say that, would you say you run a really great balanced diet for yourself?
More so now, probably within the last couple of years. Fruits, vegetables. I leave in the morning and I'll take like a handful. Or it's not uncommon for me to have a carton of strawberries, and that'll just be what I eat while at the hospital while I'm there. I mean, that's a good healthy activity. I don't have a whole lot of time to necessarily stop and have lunch, but if you eat a small carton of blueberries, you're getting the nutrients. I don't eat a lot of red meat. In fact, I don't really eat red meat hardly ever.
I don't even like red meat.
I don't either. I don't either.
It's like a big piece of flesh on there.
On the other hand, people that know me personally know that pizza happens to be one of my favorite, and Italian food is one of my favorites. The key, though, I think, is that the only way that I enjoy pizza is light cheese and sauce. You don't want to add all of the extra stuff, sausage and all this kind of stuff, because then it becomes, beyond what really, what really you're benefiting from. In fact, there was a study looking at the benefits of tomato sauce and lycopene and how beneficial that is for the body. And in the JAMA, which is the Journal of American Medical Association, in the article, it talked about the health benefit of pizza if it's eaten in the right way. In the right way is kind of the margarita type pizza, which is very minimal cheese, good sauce.
Veggies.
Veggies are great. A big steam full of broccoli. If I were asked, and I have been asked on the Facebook page and question, what would be, if you had to choose one fruit, what would be the fruit that you would recommend that would have the highest bang for your buck, if you will? My answer to that probably would be a strawberry. If you look at what the strawberry contains in it, and for the amount that you have to eat to get the benefit, probably strawberries would be high on the list in terms of a great all-round super fruit, if you will.
So we should throw the audience a bone. Strawberries this week are on sale at Fry's.
Is that true?
Yeah, for a whole container, $1.29. They're normally $3.99. I bought 12 of them yesterday.
I mean,
they freeze perfect, and they're beautiful. They're great big, and they're big containers for $1.29.
Yes,
Can't beat the Fry's.
That's
till
great.
Wednesday.
That's
till
great.
Wednesday.
Now, what would be the super vegetable, if you will? In my mind, looking at the research, knowing some of the medical background, my answer to that probably would be broccoli or Brussels sprout family. That type of food, because of the amount that you get, the amount that you need to get, or the amount that you need to eat to get the benefit is not a whole lot. So
there's got to be a secret to eat that. I hate that.
Lemon. I mean, it's the benefits
Can
are
you
just
drink them? I've never juiced broccoli. I mean, that might be interesting.
So there's studies out now in terms of breast cancer. These types of foods actually are preventative.
I saw a show 2 nights ago that in Thailand, compared to the United States, prostate cancer, they had 15 cases last year. 15.
Wow.
And here they had, the number was, I couldn't believe it. So they said, we've been doing this study, I think it was a 10-year study. They said, we have absolutely, completely learned why cancer, and it's on Netflix, I'll have to send that to you. But they said, people in Asia cut that red meat out, they live on fish and rice. And their occurrence for cancer was like almost zero for prostate cancer. And they said in their controlled study with the mice, they started feeding them a little more of a Western diet, giving them, instead of 5%, I believe it was 5% animal protein, they gave them 20% animal protein, and 97% of them got prostate cancer. Wow. 97. I was blown away. Yeah. I was like, I'm never eating that again.
It's true. That reminds me of a conversation that I had when I was in Italy last year. And it really resonated with me. We had a tour guide, and as we were driving through Tuscany, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful day, I don't know what brought it up, but the tour guide started talking about the incidence of breast cancer in Italy. And it really caught my ear. And so what she said was, her family, she has a very strong family history. Her family actually is from Switzerland, or not from that area, but the incidence of breast cancer in Italy is like the lowest on the face
almost
of the earth.
Non-existent.
I mean, it's amazing. And when we were talking, we brought up tomato sauce and tomatoes and the different types of foods, olive oil, those kinds of things, oregano, the different things that you see in the Mediterranean diet is something that they're actually seeing. They don't need research to prove it. They're seeing it in their day-to-day, but the studies there, according to this lady, and then I validated it with some research, it's true. It's true. There's a lower incidence of breast cancer there than anywhere, and it's amazing.
Did we already talk about the whole Mediterranean diet, what's in it?
Yeah, I want to get back to that. But, the other thought that I wanted to bring out in reference to prostate cancer has to do with stress. There was, again, a study that came out in looking at how stress affects the body. Stress is destructive to the body. There's no doubt about it. And I think, everybody listening would agree that stress is probably at an all-time high now. It's an epidemic. And why am I interested in the effects of stress? Because it's destructive to the body, and there are things that we can do to help lower that effect. But interestingly, they found that lowering stress levels in the body by doing meditation exercises or, whatever the case may be, to bring that epinephrine, that endorphin level down, which is a release in the body, it's a chemical. They found that the chemotherapy and radiation that was given in prostate cancer patients actually was better when they were under less stress. And it was a great study that was done, and it really got my eye because I'm interested in the pathophysiology of stress and how to alleviate it. But so that, again, listeners out there, there's different things that we can do to protect the body. Eating, bringing good food into the body, tried to eliminate the effects of stress by doing exercise, walking, water aerobics, those kinds of things. Very, very beneficial. Again, I want you, if you're listening, give us a call. We're talking about whatever you want to talk about. Give us a call. Certainly, the Mediterranean diet is kind of the topic of today because there was some really big validated research out now showing that the Mediterranean diet, including olive oil, fresh fruits and vegetables and fish and so forth, found to decrease the incidence of heart disease by 30%. That's huge.
Wow.
It's huge.
Are there any fish that you know of that aren't that good to eat?
I think that's a good question. How it's prepared is probably something that we have to keep in mind. If it's fried,
you don't want to throw them in a deep fryer that takes away the.
Yeah, you're going to probably minimize the health benefit of it rather than cooking it with fresh lemon and olive oil.
Is there a difference between salt and freshwater fish as far as because I know tilapia is the big thing now.
Yeah, health wise, I don't think so. Oh. I don't think so. What I really would be concerned with would be more how it's prepared, like tuna, for example. Fresh tuna steaks, great source. Tuna packed in, oil in a can, you've got to be very careful because of, in the can and, in the exposure to lead, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, mercury is another big thing, in
Might as well eat a
fish.
burger almost.
Yeah, so you've got to be, you've got to be careful with that. and how it's cooked. You know, you just mentioned burger. You've got to be careful with not eating undercooked food. I just had a patient in the hospital that came with a severe bloody diarrhea, enteritis, colitis, actually, that they got from eating
Foodborne illness.
Yeah, it was a foodborne bacteria. And it was, when we traced it back, it actually came from an undercooked hamburger.
At a restaurant?
At a restaurant, yeah. So, you've got to be cautious.
Wow.
There's a very, very dangerous bacteria. It's the O157 E. coli that when it gets in the system, it starts a whole cascade of events that begin. And it can actually affect the whole bleeding. It can cause what's called disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, where you can start bleeding out. And for those of you listening that are in the medical profession, you know that can lead to sepsis and, vascular collapse, and it can be a real problem.
I still know people that go to restaurants and order, I'll take a rare burger.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I have an interesting one for you.
It's something to be cautious about.
In Costa Rica, I have learned, because I'm doing a little research as we're going down there, milk and eggs and dairy are not refrigerated there in grocery stores. And I talked to the guy, well, we are not dead. We've been doing it our whole life. Now, for us going there, is that going to be a difference in system there?
It could be. Because, your immune system.
I'm not used to that.
Your immune system is not used to it.
That's kind of scary.
I would not recommend, certainly.
Eating any breakfast, huh?
Right. And, when I have patients come in and they say, I'm going to be traveling out of the country, what do you recommend that I take? It's not reasonable to take maybe a prescription of Cipro with you if you're going out of the country, just in case
Never thought of that.
you get a foodborne
Cipro
diarrhea or something, because that would be a good good treatment. While we're talking about this, I want to share another case that recently I had, something called C. diff, Clostridium difficile, and a lot of times it's an overgrowth of a bacteria in the gut that happens when you take an antibiotic. So it's not a good idea just to take antibiotics because there's always a risk with any antibiotic that you take, and there's always that balance between the risk and benefit ratio. But interesting lady came in, was treated for an upper respiratory infection, bad sore throat about a month ago. Did okay. In the middle of the antibiotic treatment, developed some really bad, crampy, diarrhea kind of symptoms, and really didn't think a whole lot about it. Stopped the antibiotics because she thought that was the problem, and then just kind of continued on, and over the next probably 2 or 3 weeks started having kind of diarrhea, constipation, cramping, that kind of stuff. Comes into the hospital with the complaint of no bowel movement for maybe
days.
5 days. So constipation actually was the presenting complaint in the ER. So unless you get a good history, you're really not going to unfold the fact that she was on an antibiotic a month ago.
Yeah, right.
So you're not really going to think about C. diff colitis. So as I'm listening, this patient came in, and the ER really coined it as somebody that was constipated, dehydrated. The GI doc saw.
You really got to probe as a doctor, don't you, into their personal stuff. Hey, tell me.
Listening is the most important, is the golden rule when it comes to history taking as a physician. So anyway, to make a long story short, nobody really listened to her, and the GI doctor got in before I did, and was going to set up a colonoscopy. And as I'm listening and as we're talking, she gave me this history about the antibiotic, and right on the spot, in my mind, I knew that C. diff colitis was something that she had until proven otherwise, and there was no way I was going to allow for a colonoscopy to be done, because there's a risk when there's a lot of inflammation, and the CAT scan showed a lot of colitis. So in fact, the stool did come back confirming C. diff colitis from the antibiotic like a month ago. So the point is that when you are seen by your doc, it's important to give a full history, even if you don't think it's really pertinent. It could be pertinent. The fact that you had an antibiotic a month ago relates to what's happening actually today.
Even over the counter stuff.
Even over the counter.
I mean, all that really takes into effect.
It can. It absolutely can. So the way that we treat C. diff colitis is with an oral antibiotic that actually treats that bacteria, because it's an overgrowth of an abnormal bacteria in the gut. And so the treatment plan now is really directed toward the actual problem rather than just guessing. And so the history is so important, especially this time. For those of you, that have been on antibiotics, this season has been a horrendous season for pneumonia and bronchitis and sinus infections. If you do develop any GI symptom, keep that in mind. If it doesn't get better after, so many days, it's possible that you can have a little overgrowth of a colitis that needs to be treated.
Is that because when you're on the antibiotics for what you're on it for, it kills all the good stuff in your system? So then that bad stuff has an opportunity to grow, and if it grips on, you're in trouble.
That's exactly right. And, so that's where sometimes probiotics are good. Greek yogurt is a great thing to do when you're on antibiotics. Why? Because it actually helps to replenish that, that bacteria flora is what we call it. And so, that's something that is absolutely, recommended. So just something to kind of think about. I think it's an interesting way to, to take care of the patient is to listen, Any other questions, Joe? Any other phone calls?
Let me go ahead and get back to the phones.
Okay, good. While he's doing that, I want to talk a little bit about pancreatitis because it kind of fits in a little bit. Pancreatitis is when the pancreas is inflamed, and there are different, many causes of pancreatitis. Two of the most common causes of pancreatitis are alcohol or gallbladder problems. And so, again, it's something that we've just got to be cognizant of, and the treatment for it is really nothing by mouth. So, we're talking about foods and, diet and all of that, when in fact, there is a treatment where we don't give you anything to allow the pancreas to, kind of settle down, because really what the pancreas does is it releases amylase and lipase, which are enzymes that help digest food. And so when it's revved up, it basically, it just continues, and when you eating revs up the pancreas, and if it's inflamed for whatever reason, you want to kind of settle that down by not feeding and not eating anything to let it calm down. So anybody that's ever had pancreatitis knows that that's the game plan. A lot of pain. Nothing by mouth. Could be very painful. Call in 480-745-1033. This has been a really interesting dialogue in terms of the medical research that is validating now diet. And I think that's really, really, really important. You had asked me, I know there's a call coming in. We were talking about the Mediterranean diet, and I want to bring out just a couple other specific contents. For example, earlier in the show I talked about tabbouleh, parsley, the cracked wheat, mint, tomatoes, and so forth. Parsley is one of the most popular herbs in the world, and I don't know if you know that or not, but worldwide it is one of the most popular. And most of us know parsley as a decoration. You get a plate and parsley is there, and we just kind of don't really pay much attention to it. But in the Mediterranean diet, there's a dish called tabbouleh, and I think it's making more and more, headline and headway in terms of a nutritional choice. And, parsley has really several beneficial effects to the body. First, it qualifies as a chemoprotective food. In other words, there's not too many foods that actually have been defined as chemoprotective, meaning that it tends to stabilize or neutralize carcinogens that the body is exposed to. For example, if you're exposed to cigarette smoke is can be a carcinogen, even secondhand smoke. There's benzopyrenes that are released. That effect in the body, those radicals that are released in the body, parsley tends to neutralize, tends to protect. So so it's a good idea to think about that. So if you're going to be exposed to cigarette smoke or other carcinogens like charcoal, we talked about this not too long ago, where you overcook meat, anything overcooked with charcoal, that
hot dogs or anything.
Yeah, they turn into what's called benzopyrenes, which can be potentially carcinogenic in the body. Parsley tends to neutralize that and is really considered one of the chemoprotective foods that's available to the human body. So I think that's really interesting. The second thing that parsley does is it contains flavonoids, which is an antioxidant. And so it prevents the oxygen-damaged cells. So parsley is just a great, great beneficial food. It's found in, tabbouleh, which is one of the Mediterranean-type foods, but just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Joe, do you have a question there?
Dana from Chandler wanted to know, is there any diet supplements you believe in? There's so many on TV now, all the ones, take this one, and you'll lose every bit of weight. You don't have to change any diets. And those are all gimmicks, aren't
to my
they?
knowledge, I don't know. I don't want to say that they're gimmicks because there may be some validated,
Gotcha.
studies behind it. But medically, as a board-certified internal medicine physician, I'm not necessarily a nutritionist. I can't really stand an endorsement of any of them at this point. I've not really been exposed, number one, to a lot of them, but I've not really seen enough data to really say one way or the other. My concern is that a lot of these kinds of dietary supplements, what ends up happening is they affect the metabolism in the body, just like the HCG that we talked about, and it turns on, it turns off. There's that change, and then in the end, you end up gaining more weight than you lose, or than you were from the beginning. So that's my concern, is really manipulating the metabolism in the body, which is not a natural good thing to do. So I would be very cautious of that. Anybody that is interested in stepping into weight loss, a couple things that I always recommend for my patients is to do a baseline panel. Where are we at? Get a good snapshot. Is your thyroid working normally? Because simply an underactive thyroid in and of itself can cause weight gain. It can also cause, if you try to lose weight and it's untreated, hypothyroidism, no matter what you do, probably you're not going to lose a whole lot of weight until the thyroid disease is treated. So that's something to really be aware of. Or different metabolism things like the hypothyroidism in the body would be one that I would want to look at. Any other questions, Joe, or
no,
comments
not
there?
right this second.
Okay. The other thing just that I want to bring out in terms of parsley, and I don't want to talk parsley, but it is such a great beneficial food to the body, is it contains this, what's called a apigenin, which is a chemical that does have anti-cancer effect, but what it does is it inhibits the formation of new blood vessels. And when you think about it, inhibiting that neovascularization in the body tends to decrease blood flow to, for example, a solid tumor or, whatever the case may be, which tends to feed it. We know that blood flow, oxygen is nutrients in the body. So if you're inhibiting the neovascularization, it could actually be an anti-tumor type beneficial effect in the body. Question is, well, how much do you have to eat? Well, I don't know that we know that. It's just something that, I think is important to know, and some of the studies down the road that will be done we'll look at. And I think the most important thing is once we identify that, it is possible now to maybe develop some supplements, maybe even some chemotherapy modalities that mimic what parsley or what's found in some of the natural foods that can be treated as a chemotherapeutic with minimal side effects. And I think that's really what we're after. We only have a couple minutes left. I can't believe this hour just flew.
It definitely did.
It really did. I want to just kind of, shout out there to our listeners. DocTalk Radio, we started about a year or so ago. And initially, we started the show sponsored by Gilbert Hospital, Florence Hospital at Anthem. There's some sponsorship opportunities that, we want to stay on the air. We definitely, Joe, I want to keep the show going.
Absolutely.
But, I think we're at a point now where we need to start looking at sponsors. And so, if anybody's interested in helping to keep our show up and going, it would be great to hear from you, or maybe your company or whatever to sponsor the show in any way, any capacity. So maybe, Joe, if you want to put your contact info, or how would they contact you?
Either you or me, and we can figure it out.
Yeah, you can check out our Facebook page, DocTalk Radio. Come on, you can friend us, you can message me that way. You can certainly get a hold of Joe at KQCK.com.
KQCKlive.com, Joe at KQCKlive.com.
Okay.
Shoot me an email, and I'll certainly get right back to you, and we'll talk and see if we can't get you plugged into a good sponsorship during the show.
Yeah, I think that this year we've done it. The hospital's been sponsoring it. I think we need to look at some other venues if we're gonna keep the show up and going. I think it's a great way, and the whole idea it was really to reach out to the community,
right?
Not only the community, but it's really international, right?
Right.
So we would love to hear from you. It's time that I value, that I'm willing to put in here.
Right.
But I think for you, we need to get some sponsors to keep the airtime up and running.
Right.
Okay. I think we're just about out of time.
Great show.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for calling, Marianne. Again, I want to thank you. You are awesome. I love you. Thank you for being out there. We'll see you next week. This concludes DocTalk Radio with Dr. Ann Borick. Till next time, I wish you health, wellness, and many blessings.
DocTalk Radio is brought to you by Gilbert Hospital and Florence and Anthem Hospitals. Topics discussed are for informational and not intended to substitute advice from your personal physician.